I'm Brice Bible, UB's Vice President and Chief Information Officer. I'll be sitting down with students, faculty, staff, and other thought leaders outside of UB to highlight some important technology topics that affect campus community members like you. Let's take a ride in one of our electric Tech Squad vans and meet our guest today. Our guest today is UB's Student Association President, Becky Paul. Becky has climbed the ladder in the Undergraduate Student Association and oversees a team of over 70 students and staff members. Becky advocates for students' needs and interests, and as you'll soon learn, technology plays a major role in getting the job done. Welcome to Tech Talk, Becky. It's so nice to have you with us today, and I look forward to the conversation with you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to UB, and then what are you studying here?
Thank you for the introduction. I'm studying industrial engineering, and I have a management minor. So I don't really have a grand or spectacular story for being at UB, I'll be honest. I was applying to schools. I was only in America for a year, I believe, at this time, and it was COVID. I didn't really know a lot of stuff. But before COVID happened, there was a recruiter, and he basically just spoke about UB a bit and, talked about how it was big and he had a lot of opportunities. And so I was like, okay, that's the one school I know. And so I applied to UB that way. My major was also a similar, slight whimsical decision.
Okay.
I did not know much about majors either, so I just took a bunch of BuzzFeed quizzes, and they gave me many different answers, and the top two were engineering and business. So I went with engineering, and then in junior year, I realized industrial engineering was more like it.
How about that? So you used BuzzFeed to give
Yes.
you some direction. Well,
Yes.
that's interesting. We may talk some more about technologies and how they can provide direction in a few minutes. But so you are currently the Student Association President. And maybe those that are watching would not know exactly what the Student Association is, and particularly what the president does.
So the Student Association is basically the undergraduate student government. So UB has I think 30,000 plus students, and about 20,000 of them is the undergrads. So we basically had a student government, kind of like high school, but bigger in a sense. And the Student Association is run by 3 officers. So you've got the president, which is what I am. You've got the vice president, who's Sammy Pang. You've got the treasurer, who's Unati Agawal. But basically, the treasurer deals with everything finance, the vice president deals with everything clubs, because we have a lot of clubs, and the president typically deals with everything else. Basically the gist of it.
Including the interviews, right?
Yeah, yeah. Especially with staff. According to our bylaws, which is the governing documents, because everything needs governing documents, the president functions as a representative in the university community and out of the university community, hence interviews.
Yes.
And so basically that's what I do. I deal with staff, anything that staff does, including the fun events that people like. So things like Fest, Carnival, that falls under staff. And usually that's under us to deal with any baby fires that occur and just try to make things run smoothly and everybody have a fun time at UB.
Wow, well, that sounds like almost a full-time job by itself. Right?
Yes, sometimes it is.
We know you have been recognized as the Paraprofessional of the Year, as well as the Council Executive Board Member of the Year. You also won the Supporter of the Year for your contributions. So can you tell us a little bit about those and why are they important areas for you?
So the Paraprofessional of the Year occurred in my sophomore year. Council Executive Board Member of the Year happened in my freshman year. And Supporter of the Year was more of an essay thing for last year. So Council Executive Board Member of the Year was actually one of the more significant ones because it was for an individual as opposed to a council.
Sure.
And freshman year was during COVID, as I mentioned earlier, but there was also a lot of things that weren't really going the way that you might expect typically because there was a lot of restrictions. And so I joined RHA for governors. And it was a bit tough trying to navigate all the restrictions and trying to see if we can make people's lives a lot better just because it was kind of sad sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about leading doing that role because I had to lead a little council and we were talking a lot about just different things, and sometimes I had to be there emotionally for people and not. And that's a very important experience for me because it started out with, I guess, 5 people in the council, and now SA has like almost 80-something plus student employees. Wow. And so it was like a good, like, okay, here's how we figure out the kinks of how we lead, and now I'm able to do better as SA president than I would have if I just gone straight into SA presidency.
According to the spectrum, we looked at the UB spectrum, your re-election platform said, I quote, strengthening communications with clubs. And part of that has to do, of course, with technology, I would think. So how do you accomplish that? What have you been doing, to strengthen communications, and how has technology helped?
Last year, when Sammy and I, Sammy's the vice president, she and I ran last year, won, and we ran again, we won. The previous year we had a Discord, but we kind of phased that out recently. And it was basically to ensure that those quick questions that clubs had, because sometimes you don't really need to come see Becky to talk about, like, to ask, okay, when is this due? You can just ask that online. And then we phased it out. We're trying to set up a Teams version of it for this year. Good. But there are a few issues with that going on, partly because of how Teams functions. We haven't yet, figured out what we're doing differently, but we know what doesn't work, if that makes sense.
You have come to the right place. We probably can help you with Teams. What other types of technologies would you like to see? So, okay, you've used Discord. You're kind of looking at Teams now. But what other kind of technologies would you like to see us offer, particularly around communications? And, both for the student association, but also students in general. What are ways that we should be thinking about communicating with students?
So there's one that's currently more, there's a problem that's currently more prevalent than in the past, but emails. So that's I'm pretty sure you're probably already aware that the fact that a lot of students are kind of emailed out, if that makes sense, where it's there's just so much, it's hard to keep track of. I don't really know what the solution would be to it, because a lot of other things are also kind of oversaturated with just information. But that's something that I guess you guys already have on your radar. Something that SA is actually looking to do is we have bulletin boards across campus. I think we have 3 for sure that I know exactly where they are that belong to SA, and what we're actually looking into do for the next year, preferably before the spring semester starts, is actually change them from needing papers into actual displays, so we can have it just change more quickly and with different, more relevant things. We bought the screen recently. I don't know if you've seen the giant screen that just sits outside of SU and just has a slideshow going. It's kind of just to model that, but in a smaller space on campus. So that's something that we've been looking into to just provide information a lot faster.
We work with displays, the electronic displays all across campus, and there may be some opportunity to work with student association to help get your message out. It's interesting you mentioned that about email. I completely agree. And of course, I'm the guy that, my team provides email for students. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
But we've embarked on something over the last couple of years that's a CRM project of such, right? And CRM is corporate speak for a better communication program around how you talk with your constituents, whether you're in a business or at a university, you name it. We've made some progress, but we still have ways to go. And one of the ideas is to try to be a little more deliberate about email messaging. Not everything is urgent for a student to see, right? If it's just informational, then why can't it be put together in some kind of weekly digest, and then you just read it at your leisure and not get 10 emails in the same day. Another is that you might get different information. So my office might send some information to students in an email, and the dean of your school might send information. Well, what if the messages are slightly different and can be confusing to students? So we're hoping that finding a better way to structure the messaging around that will help students. So the idea is to reduce the number of emails, because you're right, they get tired of it. But it's also about how can we use other communication techniques. Social media is one way, even texting appropriately. You don't want to have 50 texts from the university every day, but if it was you understood what they were for. I don't know, I'm just curious if that makes sense to you, and certainly we'd love more student input into how we would structure the new messaging approach.
I think it does make sense. I think it certainly does make sense to kind of like try to combine some of the emails that can be combined.
Yeah.
Because I recently decided to like have staff weekly emails at SA just because there was an issue last year with just different communication not going in properly. So the hope, because it's not yet done properly, but the hope is that eventually like all staff will really need to do is look at that one email every week and be caught up on what they need to do. It's just trying to make it prettier and fancier.
That's great. I think that's right in line with what I think the university would like to do. And hopefully we can get to the point that you may expect a digest of emails on a Friday, but then you know it's coming, right? And you know those are information things. But if you get a message, on Tuesday, then there's something you need to do. It would only come if it was something like that. There's another topic that's really emerged in the last year or so, and that's artificial intelligence. And it's a big word, or two big words that have a lot of meaning. But has it affected student life or your life yet?
I think it's interesting in the sense of like, just in an abstract sense, because I don't understand enough of the technicalities to say, here's how I think this should be used. But in an abstract sense, I think it's interesting because it's changing the way everybody has to think about learning.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of things that have popped up with artificial intelligence, like obviously academic integrity, cheating, but it's also helpful in terms of like, oh, now I don't have to do all these extra administrative work because it's not just like ask you a question and give me an answer. Sometimes you can actually program it to do certain tasks. Right. So I think if we were able to be more intentional about how we're using it, not necessarily saying I'm banning it, because I don't think you can ever achieve a complete ban of AI. I think students would probably just get smarter at using it without being detected, because there are AIs that help you modify the answers another AI is giving you to ensure that it's not detected. So just basically a way to integrate it so it's not taboo, but it's also not like your sole reliance on it, because that's also another problem where I think I know of a couple students who like it's just I don't want to think, it's just that.
I like the word intentional. I think that's a great idea. It means, to me, it means students, faculty, administrators, we need to come together and make intentional decisions about where it is appropriate, maybe at least initially, while we're all learning, because it's still very early, right? I would imagine you see it down the road in engineering. I can imagine there could be in your career, is it going to design something, or you still need the expert to make sure those designs are correct?
I think in my engineering classes, the class I can recall being closest to anything AI, just talking about it, was probably like my analytics and computing class, where it's more in like a machine learning environment. There's only one course that I can recall right now that was like, we support the use of AI in this class. It was entrepreneurship and small business, but that makes sense because like you need ideas, and AI, although it doesn't really think for itself, it just identifies patterns and it can make something click.
How are technologies used for fun by students? And of course we have Level Up. I don't know if you've ever gone in there, but you're probably too busy. You're an engineering student. You're too busy to go in there.
Fun fact. Our re-election pictures, Sammy and I, we took them in Level Up.
Okay, well, good.
It made it look so cool and kind of like futuristic vibes.
That's good. I'm glad you could do
Level
that.
Up. I think students really like Level Up. That's a good addition for sure. I think not just in terms of like the gaming part of it, because I recall last year I had a friend who was a video editor, and they had like the wide screens in Level Up, and that was very helpful for him. So he'd just go there for that, and sometimes he'd play games. But those are like pretty fun. People really like those.
An area we're exploring in technology is virtual reality or augmented reality, which is, I like the concept, and of course virtual reality can model a reality, but it's somebody's version of that reality. A lot of games have that capacity, right? And then the augmented reality is kind of a blend of both. So now you're in the real world, but your goggles or your glasses, if you have them, will overlay things in that real world that could be of interest. Pokemon Go is a good example of that. We think in IT that maybe there's some opportunity there from a student and a faculty member, whether it's in instruction or other ways. Have Have you seen the VR concepts being used for fun, and do you think there's application? I'm curious if you think there's a place for that.
Recently, we did go to Universal, and they have it being used pretty well for fun.
They do, yes.
And I mean, the class that I just came from, like, we kept having to take multiple pictures of the thing to, like, see the different angles. I think that would be somewhere where you can just, like, kind of like, I don't know, did you ever see Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yes.
It's So you know how they have that table
Yes.
where they, like, project things and then they can, like, spin it around and move things?
Right.
That obviously will probably take a bit to get to, but I think if eventually, like, there's spaces like that for, like, key subjects where specificity is needed, or like things are very integrate, like the very tiny screw in our design, that would be pretty helpful.
I hope someday soon we can have 3D goggles in like one of the big lecture halls in NSC, you know, and all 200 students are watching something in 3D.
There's some application in like the medical field. I don't really know much about the medical field because I'm not that kind of engineer.
I like the idea of my future surgeon having practice and practice and practice and practice with that in a 3D virtual way before they actually touch a real person. But anyway, that's a good example of it.
Yeah.
So thinking ahead, you know, we have the best students in the state of New York here. There's no doubt about it. That's right. And you know, how do you see them using technology in the future, or how will this affect it, like virtual reality or AI? You know, it's not the next class, but maybe the next or the next or the next. You know, what do you see technology going for students?
I think eventually, like, it'll become more of like a personal tutor for people.
Oh, very good.
In the sense that I live in Governors. I've lived there for like 3 years. It's a freshman dorm, but it's good because it gives me insight into like the new class. Yeah. And I have to do certain things as someone who lives in Governors in a working role. And something that has been brought up a lot of times by some of like the new freshmen is like, you know, I used ChatGPT for this, but then I identified that this was wrong and this was wrong and this was wrong, and so I modified it to be better. So sometimes it's hard for teachers to encourage or put enough effort into like self-learning of each student, because obviously if you have a big class of like 200, you're not getting to like, let me teach you the way you like to learn. Right. So I think eventually technology is going to, with like AI and other things, going to help people learn the way they like to learn a little bit better.
I like it.
And then it will be more of an aid to the teachers, as opposed to like, you're
taking the place of. Yeah. I like that a lot. I like that, your own personal assistant. You know, it's like your little robot following you around to help you be successful. That's a great idea. Maybe in a few years, you know, come back and see us, and maybe we've got, or maybe you'll fund it or design it as your industrial engineering career. You never know.
It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
We should patent it, right?
We should, yeah.
Good. Becky, thank you so much for making time, and great insights into your life and the role you play, but also into student life. And I really appreciate you coming. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's check in on the results of our social media poll from our last episode. We asked UB faculty if they knew who their Faculty Senate IT representative was. 67% of you said no. Thanks for weighing in. Head on over to UBIT's Twitter X page right now to weigh in on our latest poll. Our question this month is for students. What's your favorite game to play at Level Up? We can't wait to hear from you, and we'll share the results in our next episode. Do you have a question for me when it comes to technology at UB? Here's your chance to ask. Submit your questions to cio@buffalo.edu, and we'll answer some in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of Tech Talk. Check out our other episodes online anytime at buffalo.edu/ubit/Tech Talk.
Look at the kicks!
Look at the kicks! I know. Check out her kicks.
The shoes will be in the show.
That's right.